More than half the world is poor. My friend Gary lives in Phoenixville. He's employed part-time. He can't afford a YMCA membership for his twin daughters, and he doesn't have enough money to be with us here today at TEDx. His girlfriend has medical issues, and she almost died this past spring. And up until recently, Gary was so broke that he had to ask to borrow money for gas to get to work. There is poverty in our backyard. You know, some of us, we just face a mountain of student loan debt. Other of us have gone bankrupt. You know, some of us live paycheck to paycheck, might have lost a job or retirement. What is the best way to help the poor? The answer is in this little red cooler, of course. Most of us have been taught since we were young that the best way to help the poor has something to do with fish. Perhaps you've heard this fish tale. It begins something like this: with the hope of higher education, teach a man to fish, and he will eat for a lifetime. Followed up by the hope of capitalism. Sell your fish and buy a yacht so you can go to the deep waters and catch the big fish. But the ocean is big too. So we need the hope of technology to buy a sonar device so we can find schools of fish. But for those of you who don't live near water, buy a lottery ticket. The best way to help the poor seems to elude us, and I think that's because we begin with the wrong assumption that poverty is the problem. It's not. Hopelessness destroys lives. Hope, on the other hand, is how people thrive. And I discovered the power of hope in an unlikely place and from an unlikely person, from the poorest of the poor. While living in Ecuador, with my wife and daughter and I, we met this wonderful woman named Carmen. Carmen's poor because she can't work. She's paralyzed from the waist down. We went this past spring to visit her, to encourage her, to lift her spirits. But the amazing thing is that she's the one that energized and inspired us. We could see, the light in her eyes, and we could tell by the smile on her face that she is happier than the richest people that we know. And I thought to myself, how is this possible? And I realized that she had discovered the power of hope. Carmen practices 3 habits of hope: create, contribute, and community. Carmen creates. She makes stuff. She makes purses. She makes doll houses out of popsicle sticks and toothpicks lined with wallpaper. And she creates these lovely flowers out of paper with these intricate foldings on the petals, and she sprays each one with perfume. I have a picture of one on my phone to keep me inspired. Carmen does more than create. She contributes. She shares her creations as gifts, and some people buy them as gifts for others. She also appreciates the contributions of others. She lives in community. She brings value to her community. She's quite dependent on others, as you can imagine, but in a good way. And this is how Carmen thrives. The best way to help the poor is to create and to contribute and to live in community together. But most of us have been taught the opposite. Instead of create, we consume. We consume more than we need, and we consume on credit. Somehow we're going to spend our way out of poverty. Instead of contribute, we've been taught to collect. So we collect unemployment, we collect welfare, we collect disability, we collect winnings maybe from lottery and gambling, and we collect by suing other people. What happens to community when we consume like that and when we collect? It reduces community to commiserating, and we commiserate. We complain, baby, these times are hard. Well, we're doing TED Talks right now, not TED Sings. We complain and we lose hope. The poor don't need pity. They need a community that encourages them to create and to contribute. My friend Gary that I told you about wasn't getting enough hours at work, but he found a way to create anyway. He planted a garden in his front yard, and it was a nice garden. It had a picket fence and a little gnome. And everyone took notice, all the neighbors. In fact, some of them invited him to plant gardens in their front yards. Some of the neighbors even paid him. I could see that Gary had found hope. I think his boss took notice too, because he ended up giving Gary more hours. Now, Gary might be poor still according to some definitions, but he has discovered the power of hope to not just survive, but to thrive. So the question I want to leave with you today is this: what can you create that you can share that will bring value to your community? What can you create that you can share that will bring value to your community? Thank you.